So the Chodesh, it's Rosh Chodesh Adar Rishon. So we're blessed this year to have 2 months of Simcha, which actually starts tonight, starts the 60 days. The 60 days doesn't start from today. Today is technically the last day of Shvat. So everyone should have only Simchas Begoli in the revealed way. We're in the middle of learning here a very important idea. And it's important because the more we understand how the Nefesh Habamis operates and what it does to impact us, the better we could relate to the situation at hand. So the Rebbe speaks about the Nefesh Habamis and its ploys towards getting a person to fall. And he says that it's all because, it's very interesting, in this Maamar, he says it's all because we're not sensitive to godliness. You know, in different Maamarim, there are different reasons why the Nefesh Habamis gets to us. In this Maamar, so far, he says it's because we lack the sensitivity of Hergish Eloki, which means godly feelings. And why do we lack that? So the Rebbe says, because we aren't involved in his beinunus. And we discussed this at length yesterday, and I really encourage you to re-listen to it and think about it, that if you want a godliness, if you want Torah, if you want spirituality to truly be a value in your life, truly be a value, not just lip service and not just at times, but that your entire paradigm is based on spirituality and that's how you live your life, it requires his bonus. That's all. That's what he says. I mean, I'm making it sound, that's all. I mean, and as we learned, it's an avodah. But that was the nakuda of yesterday's shir. Today, we're on page 142, and the Rebbe, it says, he quoted the verse in the Torah by Yaakov and Esav, Kishzeh kom, zeh noifel. And this is also important. This, I don't know if we mentioned enough yesterday. Some people think I can have the best of both worlds. The truth is, and as the early Chokre Yisrael, the early Jewish philosophers write about this at length, that to have Olam Hazeh and simultaneously Olam Haba, it doesn't work. Either you really have Olam Hazeh or you really have Olam Haba. In other words, what does it mean to have Olam Hazeh? Olam Hazeh doesn't mean just having, it means indulging and pleasuring yourself with the ways of the world. From honor to food to money and all other taivas. And when you're in that mode, it is impossible to appreciate godliness. Anyone that tells you they do, they're so foolish, they're so shallow. It's not true. And the same, like I was talking to a friend yesterday about, he was reading my book about Rabbi Yoel Khan, and he said that after reading the book, he said he came to realize that Rabbi Yoel lived with a different attitude. It wasn't the attitude the average person on the street lives, and not because he was a genius, and not because sometimes he can be absent-minded and all that. No, but because his paradigm was God, was Torah, was Rebbe. It's a whole different attitude. So that's why it says, "Kishazeh kom yoni zeh noifel." When Olam Hazeh is up, Olam Haba is down. When Olam Haba is up, Olam Hazeh is down. Now, this doesn't mean to say that you should take the extreme attitude and shun Gashmias. No, the Baal Shem Tov teaches us to embrace Gashmias, but to use it for Hashem, right? The famous pasuk of last week's parsha, Ozoif Tazoif Imoi, help, you shall help the donkey. When you see the donkey of your enemy, Ravens takas masoi. is schlepping a package, and it's not your friend's donkey. No? If you see, would this apply if you see an Arab whose car is broken down? Should you go and help him fix his car? He's a Saynacha. He's Saynacha. He's your enemy.
It's a trap.
What?
It's a trap. You gotta be careful.
Okay, that's a second thing. But say it's not a trap, and legitimately he broke his tire, busted, and he's on the road, or he's next to your house. Now, of course, the pasuk refers to a Jew, so the halach is you don't have to help a guy in that way. But even, I'm just saying, Saynacha means your enemy, someone who hates you. Hates. There's no place for hate, but he hates you. And here you see his donkey, his car is broken, is messed up, the tires busted and all that. It says the Torah, Ozav Tazav Imay. Put aside your hatred, put aside his hatred, and help him fix the problem. And Chassidus explains chamor, donkey, is also associated with the word chomer, materiality or corporeality. When you see corporeality, when you see gashmius, that's tugging at you to indulge and to misbehave and all that. So the first attitude is, get out of here. Get away. You don't want to live like a friend of mine sent me yesterday, the way it was in Europe. When your kids went off the derech, you either, disowned them, or you sat shiva, or you were very upset and depressed. And he asked me, it seems like it's so far from today's attitude. And I said, yes, it is. I recall in my own family, my grandmother was a survivor from Poland, and when one of the grandchildren or anyone was ill, she would say, better me than you. And it was like, I grew up with that, like that statement. Like, if anyone has to die first, it's me. You're still young and new, you gotta live, I can go. It's that mentality. When you see chomer, and chomer, materiality and corporeality, schlepping you and tugging at you to indulge, says the Torah, Ozav Tazav Imay. Help it get back to the path. Don't reject it. That's right. Help everyone in a way that can make a difference. That doesn't mean to say that you accept their mistakes and troubles and issues, but find a way to bring them back to the fold. And this is, of course, the motto of Chabad and Baruch Hashem, many other Jewish organizations and Chassidus and the movements today. It's become, we could say, part of the fabric of the Jewish community. So in this Maamar, the Rebbe speaks about Kishazeh Kom Zeh Neufel. Let's go further now. We're up in the middle of the page, 142. Ach beheder avodah legamri. When you lack any avodah whatsoever, oigam kishalitim hu noisen libay al avodah. Even from time to time, you think about, let me do some work. But nevertheless, this type of avodah that you do think about partially is not adequate. She'ein hisbeinenus amitis. It's not a true reflection and meditation that you use. Ve'ineno b'hamokas hadas. And we discussed that yesterday. It's not coming out of depth of mind. It's a fleeting thought. Therefore, ho'ava ve'yira. The love and fear that comes from this type of superficial meditation, heim b'chitzoinius legamri. They are completely external and superficial. It's not true love, and it's not true fear. Today you love this, tomorrow you love that. Verak dimyan levad. It's a total fantasy, an imagination, Yod. In other words, I would like to love it. Like I said yesterday, that word, wannabe meditation. Ulefi show. And it's temporarily, v'chachalom ya'uf, Yoni, you said it's from the Slichas, and it's like a fleeting dream, shenifsekes legamri, that's complete, it ends completely at some point. The b'yesat tefillah v'achreya, during davening and after davening, yesh ezer roishim tov al kol panim, there is some good remnant that's left over. When it comes to the dining room and to eating breakfast and supper and lunch after we daven, nishkach mimeno hakol, it's totally forgotten. When it passes, gam haroshim, even that little remnant is no longer there. And what takes place? The automatic overpowering of corporeality of the nefesh habamis takes over. The first thing the nefesh habamis takes over its position in the person is, he says, satisfy yourself. Of enjoyment. Self-indulgence. With what? With what? It begins with, he's happy of himself. We don't mean here Avram, having healthy self-esteem. We mean the sense is, you know who I am. God's gift to mankind. Could you imagine what this world would be like if I wasn't here? You gotta be kidding. Zufrieden von sich. He is satisfied, he's happy. Hey, hi, Mr. Big Shot. Hey, b'torasai. But the Rebbe says, no. It is Torah. I know Shas. I learn Daf Yomi every day. I wrote Svarim. I'm the big Rav. I daven for 4 hours. I don't eat much. I don't sleep much. So he's happy inside with his Torah learning and his service of God. And so too, the way he relates to worldly matter and worldly issues, it appears to him that he conducts himself in all aspects, whether it be in his house, whether it be in his business, the way the Torah demands of him. So he thinks he is the best, on the best path. This word zochor means, and since his heart is kind of gluttonous on him, meaning not in the sense of food, but he's like, he just goes around with that feeling, I'm the best, I'm great.
Heaviness.
Well, no, not a heaviness. No. On the contrary, Yoni, a lightweightness where, it's easy, I'm great, I'm the best. But he has this feeling that everything is great because of his satisfying himself from himself, about himself. In other words, forget about what he has. The very fact that he exists, he says, it's the greatest thing. I'm the greatest thing since the slice of pizza. In Yiddish, again, the language is Hillel. Is zufrieden. He is happy mit sich, with himself. And he says the Rebbe, Ze atzmo megashem oisoi. This very feeling materializes him. It makes him more geshem. And automatically the light of God, as it's revealed and shines, doesn't shine in this man's soul, this person's soul. Why? Because the geshem is a blockage. The chumri is the corporeality was wert von sein Zufriedenkeit, that is created because of his self-happiness, von sich, of himself. Der lostnit, it doesn't allow kein hergish ruchni, any spiritual feeling. So therefore, when he then has an opportunity to indulge in some kind of taiva, b'dvarim hamutarim, impermissible matter, it has 6 hechsherim on it. Hein beyond the asokov, whether it be in business, hein beyond the achil or steal, whether it be in eating or drinking, van hoga and conduct, he can't control himself because he's used to pleasuring himself because he's the best thing. So the more that he pleasures himself, hey, you know who's being pleasured? God's gift to society, to mankind. So of course it's important to me to pleasure myself. In Yiddish, kann sich nicht abhalten. He cannot control himself and stop himself from indulging. In addition to this, that he, der Mutter, is by him, top of 143. Mit a merchov, in addition to the fact, by this type of person, what is muttar, what is permissible, is by him in an expansive mode. I'm allowed to do this, I'm allowed to do this, I have a heter for this. It gets broader and wider, allowed. In the mas related min mutter el ha-sofik mutter. So all of a sudden he starts descending from those items that are really permissible but not necessary, to items that are doubtful whether they're mutter. The Rebbe calls that hasofik mutter. In other words, his descent begins from indulging in what's mutter to then going to what's sofik mutter. Hainu, in Yiddish. Der mutter, was la'olam is das nicht mutter, the thing that's permissible, which really is not permissible. What do you mean, Yon, it's not permissible? Yonason, technically it's permissible, it's kosher. But as a Jew, come on, we created to have to indulge in everything that's in front of you? No. Nor men hot das matir gemacht. We made it kosher, we made it permissible. Behechshedim. With all kinds of justifications and permissibilities. Oh, in other words, this item here is what we call sofik mutter. And this fellow that's accustomed, because he's so happy with himself, to justify his existence and that he deserves everything, he takes something that's sofik mutter, and he makes of it mutter vadai. It's surely mutter. And then he comes, look at the word here. It doesn't say leired. Avram, it says lipoil. It leads him to fall. That's what I was telling you a few classes ago. There is yored, yerida, a descending from gradually, and then there is nefila, no fail, flat fall from the top of the mountain all the way to the valley below, in one shot. We call that a nefila. So the Rebbe says, when you go from sofik mutar to isar, it's no longer a gradual fall, it's a complete fall, because the first thing was, it was mutter, and you indulged. Okay. The next thing is, it's sofik mutter, and you make it into mutter. So you still have something to back you, because it's sofik mutter. But when you enter the realm of isur, there's no justification. It's usur. Yes, Hillel.
I just wanted to mention that in the field of addiction, there was a researcher, a practitioner named Jelinek, who kind of formulated a curve of the stages of addiction and recovery. It becomes like an inverted U. You start out with a sort of gradual descent into alcoholism, addiction, with casual use, etc. And there are these very predictable stages until you sort of hit you hit bottom. Sounds like a very analogous to what we're talking about here.
Right, thank you for sharing that. And he says, and from the suffix heter position, he ends up falling, chas v'sholem, God forbid, even in forbidden matter. This is the progression, the orderly progression in one's fall from top to bottom. And he quotes the pasuk, Shamanto aviso kosiso, right? It's in the Torah. You have fattened yourself, you have thickened yourself, and kosiso is another similar meaning. In other words, so the tchila, look how the Rebbe explains this, it's so beautiful. The tchila hu shamanta. In the beginning, Yoni, it's only shamanta. A little extra schmaltz.
What's the context of this pasuk in the Torah?
It's by the techacha that we went astray, that we're okay. So the Torah uses the words, 3 words to describe the same thing, or is it the same thing? So the Rebbe is explaining, overall it's the same idea that we've basically are indulging, but the Rebbe says it like this: the tchilo shamanta, shehu anos atzmai. You see, the Rebbe says it's like a little oil, you're just smearing some oil on yourself to make you feel a little better. It's about yourself, not about anything else. Men wird zufrieden mit sich. Like we said earlier, we become happy with ourselves, und von sich, and from ourselves. And we receive pleasure from those things that we pleasure ourselves with. The Rebbe says, as is known, as though the Rebbe is so far from this, but he says, as is known, the nature of those that are called Bali Hano. Okay? There's a category, guys, called Bali Hano. He's so descriptive. The etzem adover in the ger kol kach. Look what he says. Those that are in the category of Bali Hano, the thing itself, the item, he don't care really. Whether it's cake, steak, this or that. The bottom line is pleasure. That I have pleasure from it. There's no difference in the item itself. If it's precious, or sweet, or something that's customary and simple. Nevertheless, the primary thing for him is that he pleasures and fulfills his indulgence, his taiva. So therefore, you say, oh, this person has a taiva, he has a taiva to do this and that. No! Even if he doesn't have such a big taiva, but for him it's a taiva. For him, what for someone else is considered ridiculous and not interesting, for him, he's all infatuated with it. He's all sold on it. He must have it. The zel shamanta, this is the first word in that pasuk, shamanta. You have fattened yourself with the word shamein. The oisel ekeiras ruach. It makes for the person es macht ihm Zufriedenkeit. The Rebbe is translating here shamanta. It makes you happiness, but not positive happiness. Happiness of ego. Yes, you understand.
The word is self-indulgence. The master of self-indulgence.
Thank you. Okay, a master of self-indulgence. But he's using the word, Yonis, Zufriedenkeit. Zufriedenkeit doesn't mean self-indulgence. Self-indulgence leads to Zufriedenkeit. Zufriedenkeit means happiness. But happiness in the sense, because of the pleasure, not the particular pleasure, because he is being pleasured. Regardless of in what form he's being pleasured. Next word, avisa, which means you have fattened yourself, thickened yourself. Av means thick, with an ayin. Shenase av vegas. he becomes thick and coarse. Die Zufriedenkeit, this self-happiness, macht him grob, it makes him grob, coarse, chomristic, corporeal. Und der Lust nicht kein herrliches Luchen, it doesn't allow in any spiritual feeling, bis es wird Rachman Litzlan, until he goes to the third stage, which is the worst, the kosisa. And the Rebbe explains, as es is mechase, gama seichel anushi. Kosisa is the position where it covers even human intelligence. You fall into all kinds of bad and evil, God forbid, even things that are damaging to yourself, harmful. Alcohol, he mentioned the alcohol addiction, but it's not just for that. You start with a little, Hillel says, and the curve shows, right? You end up doing things to yourself that what happened is you lost your mind. You lost your mind. You're killing yourself. You are actually killing yourself. What are you doing? So in the beginning, the first two stages, Moshe, of Shamanta and of Visa, you weren't at that point. If you knew you were going to kill yourself that way, you would never do it. You want to indulge, you want to feel good about yourself, fine. But if someone makes you aware and you stop and think, hey, this is leading to death or to illness and all that, one second, you stop. Because Sisa is already a further degree of indulgence where you lose your brains. Meaning to say, you can't talk rationally to the person. Yes, Moshe.
Rabbi Delva, it's very interesting because I'm listening to what you said yesterday for the last couple of days about, I forgot the name of the chassid he did such iskafia. And he said that if I would have found out that doing 1 day less of iskaf, I would have lived one more day, have done it.
Rabbi Yaakov, yeah.
Because it's in a strange way. This almost sounds like the polar opposite of the iskafia, the person who gets so into the iskafia, but at the same time, there's like there's also at the same time though it feels like a similar energy to it.
Right, but you're saying a similar energy in the negative, right?
No, but in the negative. But I'm saying that
you're saying that they share a commonality. Each is
yes.
Very interesting. Yeah, I hear your point. That's a good. Got to develop it a little better in words myself, as well. But I think I'm hearing your chachma, the idea that you just threw out. It's starting to.
Because sometimes I see from time to time I see in certain people. Every once in blue moon, I see people who are so detached from the Gashmias world, they're so into like the Ruchni world. The problem though is that sometimes, and they don't mean to do this, but because they're so detached, they actually end up hurting other people. In other words, somehow they end up using other people or hurting other people.
Oh. Right.
Okay, and they don't realize they're doing it.
Right.
I don't want to start giving examples right now, but I've seen this for a long time.
It's interesting.
In other words, that
it's interesting.
It's almost as if it ends up being a form of being selfish.
Yes. In other words, you want to be frum and religious and all that on your own shoulders. Don't put it on someone else.
Correct.
Don't say, I'm going to sit in Beis Medrash and learn and daven and have your wife, be the slave, the chuli.
Yeah, yes. or other people end up being
other people, the gabbai.
Right.
The gabbai or the rabbi. The gabbai or the rabbi.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hillel.
I just wanted to share a sort of startling story I read last week from the Talmud Rebbe that he described that when he was in Avreich, he was walking Shabbos afternoon to go from where he lived in Beit Pagan to the Ger Beis Medrash in Yerushalayim. And on Rechav Malachi, he was behind some girls, and one of the girls dropped a siddur. So he didn't exactly know what should he do. Should he pick it up? Is there a mitzvah upon it? Shabbos Aveda? So he put the siddur in his pocket and he forgot about it. And the Ger Rebbe that night, when he was parting from him after the Shalosh Seudos, after Marav, he asked him what was in his pocket, and he told him this whole thing. And the Ger Rebbe told him to go speak to a certain Rav in the Beis Medrash and ask him what the halacha would be in this case. It was a whole case of all kinds of lamdish shaylas, some terms I wasn't even familiar with. And this Rav, this Ger Chassid, says to him, "Why didn't you give it back? You were behind the girls. You saw them drop it. Why didn't you give it back?" Which he said just shocked him. But and so then he went back and he spoke about it with the Ger Rebbe, who told him that she had a mitzvah to publicize that it would be lost. And he said, and the Ger Rebbe said, and if she comes to collect it, have your wife give it to her. But the posek had told him that he should have approached them, and that was sort of the overriding principle. I was kind of taken aback by that.
I don't know. I don't know what's the issue with giving back the siddur to the girl. I don't get it. What it's not sneers?
Yeah. I think that was the implication, right?
I was told by Rabbi Menachem Porush. Some of you don't even know who he was because you came to Eretz Yisrael after he passed away. But he was a chaver at Knesset. Going back.
I remember him, yeah.
Yeah, going way back. I interviewed him. It's in my book, Conversations with the Rebbe. Because he had shaykhs to the previous Rebbe yet and to our Rebbe in the 40s and 50s. So it was and he had this interesting life, 7 generations, Yerushalmis and public servants. So we spoke about the whole idea of closing down Mei Hasharim and Geula on Shabbos to cars. And he told me that the Brisker Rav Velvel Brisker, who was known as a Kanoi, right? But not a Natura Karta Kanoi, a real Torah Kanoi. He told me that he was against closing the streets over there. And that when they came to get him to sign the declarations, he didn't want to. And he said to Rav Nachum Porush, who was, speaking on behalf of all the Frum people, and the people of this neighborhood by large wanted that. So the Briskirov told Rabbi Porush, he said, "What are you doing by closing this street here?" And he named the streets on this street here. You're just causing that those that are being Mechal Shabbos and driving should drive more because they have to go around. So what you're doing is causing to a greater Aveda. That's what he told me. The Briskirov told him. I printed it in the book because it's fascinating. It's fascinating. The Briskirov, who you would think, hey, oh yes, let's shut down the streets because Chilul Shabbos, he said just the opposite. And my point is to what Moshe was saying, what you're saying, it's easy to fall into that trap, and you have to be very careful, especially when it involves other people in any sensitive way. So the kud over here is, and I just one more thing. It's in writing too. Yesterday, my editor calls me. I cited a certain story, and the editor calls me and he says, you write and you say about this person that he didn't become the Rebbe because he was in business. And I said I wrote that because at the time I didn't want to hurt him. But that's not the real reason. And I said, I don't want to write that because it's not true. There was a time he was in business, but that's not the real reason why people didn't want him as the Rebbe. I said the real reason is because he didn't have a refined character. He had a tough side to him. And people couldn't relate to that. So I said to my editor, now you find a way how to say it in a nice way. And I'm thinking about, I'm saying here is a person who the rest of the book lauds him, and he was a significant person and a special person. Yet, this comment coming from an old chassid who knew him from is very telling that in this area, you don't belong in this area. In every other area, you're great. But in this area of being a Rebbe, it's not your cup of tea. And now, so I'm just saying what Moshe is saying. It's like you don't want to hurt someone else, and yet you don't want the person to hurt you. So you have to find a sensitive way where things are clearly clear, demarcation, and this is the art of relationships, and it's an art, and not many people are good at this art. It's a specialty to be able to know the nekuda and not stretch it too much, and at the same time not hold it back too much. That's a specialty, and those that excel in that area are great mediators, great gaboyim, really people who are able to negotiate, great therapists, great rabbis, teachers, where you're able to take two sides and give each one their respect, and at the same time not allow either side to overstep what they're good at and to stay away from what they're not good at. Yes, Hillel.
You're just reminding me of a really heroic client I once had who had been a Rebbe in a yeshiva katana for small kids. And he was a man who struggled with sexual attraction for small kids.
Okay.
And he had it sort of managed and so on. But when his wife died, when this man's wife died, he immediately resigned. He had Das Torah, but he immediately resigned because he was concerned about that he knew himself. It was an extraordinarily courageous thing to do. This had been his whole career, his whole identity, so to speak, and then suddenly he resigned, and nobody knew the reason, except his Rav and I as his therapist. It was just an extraordinarily heroic thing, I thought.
Mm-hmm. I hear you, and I will not comment more on this sensitive issue. You guys saw that letter that some woman wrote that's now circulating. It is as long as the Golus. It is a very long letter. Just came out yesterday. It's on all the sites now. Very painful to read. Very painful to read it. I just couldn't. I just had to skip some. I just very painful. But I don't know. There's nothing to say. I don't have what to say. All I can say is that these things have to stop. These things have to stop. Hillel, are you now being? Are you involved in this field because of what happened recently?
Say it again?
Are you being asked? Are people asking you about this issue as a counselor?
It's definitely come up. This whole case has come up in my clients for sure. Because I deal with many people who have a lot of abuse in their background, and
we need Mashiach. We need Mashiach. Because this thing that happened, I don't have to tell you, but this thing happened. It's a blow to the religious system, to the Torah system. It really, it's a terrible thing, because how can you trust anybody?
That's right.
That is the issue over here, and this is something that I think, I don't know, Moshe, but this to me is is one of the issues that's really why it's hitting home. Everyone is, in addition to the magnitude of the abuse and who did it and how, et cetera, it's the whole idea is, so the rabbi, the Rav can't be trusted, the Mashpia can't be trusted, the Das Torah can't be trusted. What's the difference? What's the difference if you're this or you're that? You have a congregation, you don't have a congregation. So it's a very, very deep wound. It's a very deep
Go
wound.
to the corner.
Okay, Chevra, let's continue tomorrow. Have a great Chodesh, everyone. Nice learning. Sei gesund. Moshe, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. Sei gesund. Bye-bye.
Yes.